Ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of the Drilling and Drilling Podcast. We're down here on King Street with what his boss Tim has called an icon of the industry from Foraco, Peter Jacobs. Welcome.
Thanks, guys.
That's where you guys are meant to clap. Every time. No clapping? Yay. Thank you, Renee. Yay. One week I will get them to actually clap when I say the person's name. Icon of the industry. I'm going to start there. How does it feel having that? Having your boss say that about you?
That's a very generous term and probably used quite loosely late at night. But no, look, I've worked with Tim for many years. In Canada, he was my boss for a good 10 years over there, and more recently at Foraco. So yeah, we've known each other for a very long time.
Good. Call yourself friends now, or just mutual connections?
No, we're still friends. Tim was just out recently, so yeah, we drank some good wine together.
That's good.
Yeah.
What's your go-to?
I like my Shirazes, Shiraz Cab Sav,
Yeah.
Yep.
I've gotten more into like rosés recently, like a good
summer
chilled.
drinks.
Yeah, it really has. Because I've moved from Melbourne over to WA, so I've not experienced this autumn is basically summertime in Melbourne, so I'm enjoying the warm weather, so it's quite nice. Let's go back to, I guess, the beginning of your journey. Talking about, was there a point in your past where you felt that you wanted to get into this industry, into drilling, or did you stumble across it?
Literally stumbled across it. I grew up on a farm outside of Geraldton.
Yeah.
So when I finished school, I headed off and did an apprenticeship as a mechanic.
Okay.
And then did a year on the crow boats after that, as most young guys in Geraldton do.
All right.
But, that was a disaster. You used to get paid contract rates by the bag of crays that you caught, and it was a terrible season. So we weren't I wasn't making any money.
Okay.
And at the time I had a girlfriend, and we used to call it the dole shop back then. She worked in the dole shop. I think it's called Centrelink now. But anyway, I went in to see her one day, and there was a little job card on the notice board saying diamond drill helpers, offsiders needed, $400 a week, room and board supplied. So I thought, right, that's me, and off I went.
What were you getting paid on the cray?
Oh, I can't remember. For the cray boats, it was so much a bag. It was $20 a bag or something.
Wow.
It was less than subsistence living with the amount that we caught. Yeah.
Just go from there. Any crazy stories? Anyone fall overboard or cray? I'm always asking that anytime anyone's on a boat, but people fall over constantly.
No, it was all good. I didn't get seasick, so yeah.
Brilliant. So saw the ad on the diamond in the doll shop for diamond site. What was sort of your first day like? What was that feeling? First time on a ring?
I ended up working, or got taken out and dropped off at the rig. They were down about 800 metres deep, and I actually knew the driller that was there. I knew him off the stations up around the Murchison. And he said, "Are you afraid of heights?" And I lied and said no, and I hate heights. And he said, "That's good, because we've got to change the bit." So he said, "Get up the mast," and away we go. So 800 metres of pipe out and back down again with a new bit.
Yeah.
And that was my introduction to drilling.
Shaky legs walking on the way up there.
Yeah, and
just hold it in.
My wrists were that swollen, I couldn't hold a beer, and it was a good introduction. But I ended up spending 5 years with that company. So
wow, really. So you sort of began that progression. Obviously, you could become more and more comfortable. Was everything sort of learnt on the job? From like day dot, you're basically on the rig, and they're like, do this, and you're slowly learning things, or was there like a induction phase?
No, it was sort of sink or swim. So the career was sort of split. Because I was a mechanic, they'd pull me back into the workshop to help build rigs, refurbish rigs, and then back out in the field again. So I sort of rose to the dizzy heights of trainee driller. And then another opportunity came up with a product supply company. Okay. So that was an opportunity to move to Perth. So
all right.
I headed down here, and they were global, so I got the chance to, whenever they sold a drill rig or a coring system, I'd go out and set it up for the client, show them how to maintain it, do that sort of work. So that was great. I got to travel to every state in Australia, most of the larger mines, exploration plays. Spent a lot of time in New Guinea, which it was a really rewarding career for that period.
Fantastic. You were there, so you were at this company for 5 years, the one where you were doing the drill bits and stuff?
About 4 years, I think, and then they got taken over by, it's Atlas Copco or Heavy Rock now.
Okay. Yep.
And sort of wound that business down in Australia, and then I ended up joining Longyear at the time in the late 80s.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
what's been a big player for a very long time. How did you find that transition, I guess, from going into sort of jewelry? I mean, you were a mechanic, so it's kind of going back to your roots, I guess, and understanding that. But you personally, how did you find adapting to those changes of those different roles? Like, what was sort of the key thing for yourself?
Yeah, it was pretty fluid. You sort of
Yeah.
you knew how the field operated. You knew enough about drilling to not get into too much trouble.
Yeah.
And you knew the mechanical and hydraulic side of things. So yeah, well, it wasn't a difficult transition.
Did you ever have to fix a rig on site?
Many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the craziest sort of thing that happened there? Like oil spilling everywhere, people yelling, not knowing what's happening. Like,
Look, it wasn't so bad back in the day because
Okay.
the rigs were a lot simpler. They're a lot
Okay.
more complex now.
Yeah.
And you didn't have the mechanical backup. You're expected to learn how to fix it and keep it running yourself. So we had very little downtime.
oh wow, okay.
I think because we were on top of the maintenance, because most guys did have some mechanical background, even if they weren't fitters. They had strong mechanical backgrounds, and you just kept up with the maintenance and you kept things going.
Do you reckon if you're on a rig now, you'd be able to fix up 90% of it, or
I'd be able to offer lots of advice.
should do this, guys?
Whether it's good, whether it's right or not, it's probably a different story. But no, they're a lot more complex now.
Yeah. I mean, we've been out to a couple of rigs, and I mean, it's even seeing pictures of the ones all day, it still completely blows my mind. But you're talking to someone who just only recently learned how to change the wiper fluid on his car and got really excited about that. So I'm technologically inept when it comes to that. But it's very impressive. So you moved in and then shifted to Boort Longyear. What was that transition like? What was your role going into that? Because you were there for a while, right?
Yeah, it was a similar role, or they used to call it product technician. And I did a couple of years in Adelaide with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were doing a global release of an underground drill. So
Okay.
I was lucky enough to get the straw to do that. So you sort of took it around to South America, North America. And
Awesome.
when I was in Canada, one of the bosses over there that I had met a few years earlier in Ghana commissioning a rig, he said, would you like to move over here?
Yeah.
So, he didn't have to ask twice.
Yep.
And 6 months later, I'd moved to North Bay in Canada.
Yep.
Originally on a 3-year work permit, but when that expired, they said, well, do you want to stay? And I said, sure. And ended up spending, a total of 12 years over there.
Wow. So like a lot of Aussies and a lot of people, when they go over to Canada, they're like, it's very much like Australia. It's just Australia North, effectively. Did you find that as well? Like culturally, is it quite significantly different, or like?
No, very much so.
Yeah.
Very similar culture, very similar sense of humour.
Yeah.
The big differentiator is just the climate there.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the climate and the accents, it'd be just like mixing with a bunch of Aussies.
Yeah.
Fantastic people.
Yeah, no, it's really good. What was your favourite part, I guess? Like being in Canada for 12 years, you must have seen some pretty incredible things. I know places, there are a lot of incredible places out there, and you would have been out, I guess, in the wilderness a lot. Like talk to me about like what it was like just being out and about in that.
Yeah, initially when
environment.
coming from WA and the goldfields, Murchison, where I'd done a lot of my sort of field work, when I got over there, I was just blown away. The lakes, the forests, the mountains, it was just incredible. But the funny thing is, after about 3 or 4 years, I started to yearn for the red dirt and the desert. So I started to miss that.
Wow. I can see that, it just feels like home. When we drove out to Cal for diggers, we were just like, I was amazed by just how red the dirt was on the way out there. But I guess you're going from white to red fairly quickly. Any crazy encounters with animals over in Canada? I mean, I'm always hearing stories about bears, so I'm always going to ask about it.
We used to have black bears around town. You had to keep your rubbish locked up and that sort of thing. But no wild encounters. I got to see some fantastic wildlife.
Yep.
Caribou migrations, that sort of thing, from helicopters, and just thousands upon thousands of animals moving. So that the wildlife, experiencing the winters, even though I wasn't a real fan of the cold weathers, just to see how they dealt with it and adapted to it was an eye opener.
Oh, that's crazy.
And the fact that they really experience 4 seasons over there.
Yeah.
You get your summer, it's very short. The fall or the autumn is just magnificent when the hardwood trees turn colour.
Yeah.
You get the brutality of the winter. And then we like spring here. It's a real shitty season over there because everything's slushy and thawing out.
And gone from there.
Yeah.
So obviously, doing a lot of drilling and a lot of exploration and stuff here in Australia, so we're going to be very vastly different to what it is over in Canada. What do you see as the two biggest differences, I guess, between how the teams operate and work here to how they operate and work in Canada?
Geologically, it's different because where a lot of the mines are in Canada, it's on what they call the Canadian Shield. And what happened there was during the last ice age, when the glaciers retreated, they pulled all of the overburden, the topsoil away. So Canada's pretty well on bedrock.
All right.
Where Australia's such an ancient continent, all the the mountains have weathered away, and we've got all this overburden on top of the bedrock. So we have to go 100, 200 metres to sort of get to fresh rock here, unless we've got outcropping stuff. Where in Canada, they're sort of 5, 10 metres, and if that, they're into the bedrock straight away.
Yeah.
There's water everywhere, so you never have an issue with, you don't have to cart water, you just run water lines, you'll pick up a water source within a couple of 100 metres wherever you're drilling virtually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that geological setting is a lot different. You can't use trucks over there because it's just too rugged. So
wow.
the majority of drill rigs are skid mounted. They're moved with bulldozers, log skidders. And the rigs have to be shacked in as well, just for the cold climate.
Okay, perfect. When you say shacked in, can you just explain that to me?
It's more or less they build like a box around the rig, so it's a bit like the rig's inside a container.
All right.
They have heaters inside there,
Nice.
so if it's -30, -40, it can be quite snug inside the rig shack. Yeah.
I was going to ask that. Do you do it all year round, right? Like there is no, it's like snowing, we got to stop, or like does weather play an adverse scenario to those?
It does. It is a bit seasonal, but probably most of the drilling does get done in winter.
Okay.
Because a lot of it near the lakes or the swamp ground, it all freezes up, and then you can get access. So
okay. Yeah, that makes.
They do drill on top of the lakes, on top of the ice.
Yeah.
So probably springtime is when the drilling season does break up. And that's traditionally why they have the PDAC in spring, because that's a sort of a slack period for drillers.
So everyone just come in and they'll get more people during that time. Yeah. So speaking of PDAC, you didn't go this year, but you've been previous years?
I think I've probably been to over 20 PDACs over the years. Yeah.
For someone like yourself, obviously, it's, from what I've always heard, it's always a great place to go and interact with people and meet and mingle. And mining is very connected industry. Like you get to know people. Have you found like navigating those kind of conferences and sort of how you hold yourself? Is it, just very much, you're going to hang out with people do you get a lot of business yourselves? Like do you work a lot of business through there, or?
The Australian team doesn't really, because you get the global clients over there and they only send their corporate sort of HR, PR teams. So you don't see many of your local clients over there. There's probably a good smattering of Australian juniors over there, but they don't have booths, so you don't often run into them. So as far it's really a North American show, from what I could see. And I've sort of got my own take on conferences, and it's really a catch up for the geos. They haven't seen a lot of their buddies for 12 months or longer. And I find that service providers, you sort of drop down the pecking order fairly quickly, and they'd rather spend time with their buddies catching up with them than having business meetings with service providers. Yeah,
no, I've definitely felt that when you walked up to a conversation, you just want to introduce yourself, and it's like, well, I've definitely interrupted I haven't seen you in 6 years sort of conversation. So no, it's good to know that I'm not the only one. I can feel that sometimes. So obviously in Canada, 12 years, it's a very long time. Well, for me, it's quite a long time. What happened? How did we end back up in Oz? Like, what was the transition period from there for you? Yeah,
my kids were born over there, so we had twin boys, and we sort of started thinking, and they were into primary school.
Yeah.
And sort of thought, like, if we don't start making plans to get back to Australia, if they get to high school, you don't want to disrupt them through that period.
Yeah.
And then they're off to college, and they're Canadian. They're born there, all their mates are there, and we'll get trapped there because our kids are Canadian. So we thought we'd better get them out and get them back to Australia, because I didn't want to be fighting the snow and ice when I was retired in Canada. So that's sort of probably it happened a little bit earlier than what we planned, but that was sort of the main driver, is not to let the kids get settled there.
Yeah, no.
And they hated us for pulling them out of that environment. Yeah. But, kids are pretty resilient. They got over it.
Yeah. How old were they when you guys decided to move over?
They were 6 when they came back.
All right, perfect. Yeah. Those your only kids?
Yes,
six
twin
boys.
boys. Yep.
I don't know how you do it. I've got 2 boys myself. They're 3 and 5, and I don't know how I could do 2 of the same age.
Well, I was travelling a lot, so yeah, kudos to my wife for managing that mostly on her own.
That's incredible. So moved everyone back it's back to Perth, or
No, back to Adelaide with
Adelaide.
Port Longyear.
Yeah, perfect. Whereabouts in Adelaide were you?
I was living up in the hills in Blackwood.
Okay, yeah.
So we were down, Longyear was down on Marion Road, so I came
Yeah.
back as the manager for drilling services for Port Longyear, Australia.
Yeah.
Did that for 3 or 4 years, and then Port Longyear decided to go public, or they were owned by Anglo American, and they were going to divest them and list them. So they got private equity involved and went on a buying spree of other drilling contractors. So I was sort of involved in that process of trying to bulk them up to put more money in the hands of the private equity guys' pockets.
Yeah.
That's what the main driver was. Yeah.
It's always the goal, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. That's interesting. You say Marion Road. I grew up in Adelaide. I went to Golden Grove High School.
Okay.
And then, like you're saying names, and I'm like, oh, that's triggering memories.
Yep.
So, fantastic. So, how did you end up back in WA? Great state.
So we went through this period where we bought up a lot of companies. I sort of was a bit disillusioned with where some of it was going, and another good friend that I worked with, Derek Lachlan, he was over here working for Imdex. So he said, look, we've got a role over here to run reflex instruments. Do you want to come on board? So I jumped at that and moved on over and was general manager of Reflex for 2 years, I think. Which, again, was a fantastic role. It was global, great products, fantastic market share.
Did you travel a lot with that as well? Was it more just Australia-based?
No, we'd sort of circumnavigate the world twice a year. So
so good.
Start off in South Africa, head up to Europe, then across to North America, then down to South America and back home. And
fantastic. Do you spend, because you've obviously travelled a bunch, where just for yourself is your favourite sort of place that you enjoy going, whether it's the food or the culture or the environment? Like
Australia's pretty good.
Yeah, Australia's great. You're right, I love it. I love home, but like just overseas, like what's
PNG would be the most interesting place I've ever been to. Yeah.
Why so?
Just absolutely wild.
Yep.
Totally wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I'm just so glad I did get to see it, and it was back in the 80s. So the countryside, the people, each valley had their own dialect. There's over 1,000 different languages there. Just an amazing place.
That's.
But no, I like North America.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not a great fan of crowds, so Europe can get pretty busy at times, and especially during tourist season.
Kind of would have been nice as well.
Toronto's a fantastic city, very multicultural, great restaurants. It's a good city.
That's fantastic. Do you still go back there now, like obviously with this role?
Heading back there in July, August for holidays,
And so with family as well, yeah?
Yep.
Amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we've got, we're at Reflex, obviously working with instruments and learning. I love looking at that website and just seeing all the tools that you can actually use within mining that I just never thought of, and so many different instruments. Did you learn a lot from there? Did you help develop some things? Like, what were some of your achievements, I guess, from that particular role? I know you were only there for 2 years, but the impact that you felt.
It was sort of right on the cusp of when they were introducing the core orientation tools.
Okay.
So that was pretty interesting to get those out and educate the clients on what they could bring to the party versus using the old, crayons and spears to mark core. So there was a lot of work in that. I hadn't done a lot of work with multi-shot cameras in the past, so I learned a lot. The gyros were just coming more into flavour then.
Perfect. And then finally, we reached Foraco, which you've been at for a while. Is that right? Like it's Reflex and then Foraco?
Yeah, I joined Foraco. So Tim Bremner had joined Foraco back in 2006 to do a startup in Canada.
Yep.
And it was 2010, he said, look, Foraco wants to broaden their wings. Australia's a huge market. They don't have a presence there, so they want to get into it here. And they purchased a company called Moss Lake Drilling.
Okay.
And then during the time I was at Reflex, they tapped me on the shoulder and said, look, do you want to come and run this for us? So, it was just too good an opportunity to pass up.
Yeah, perfect. And what sort of kept you there? Like, what's been the learnings and the enjoyment that you found from this particular role?
It was an interesting time. So I joined in 2010.
Yep.
We sort of had a reasonable couple of years, and then post 2012, it was just a terrible time for the drilling industry, drilling and mining industry.
Okay.
Everything fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just brutal. We'd purchased J&D drilling as well just before that happened. So
Yeah.
saddled with a lot of debt and not a lot of work.
feeling the pain.
So yeah, you got to tough it out. And I really hand it to drilling contractors, because I don't think there's any other industry in the world where your revenue could get cut in half, cut by 70% in the space of 12 months. And navigating through those challenges, the tough side of it, having to let over half your staff go.
Yeah.
Trying to maintain your equipment so when things do pick up, you are in a position to take advantage of any work that does come up.
Yeah.
And then to see that the business doesn't come back slowly, it comes back with a vengeance, and your clients expect you to be out there and satisfying their needs. So it really is a difficult business to manage through those cycles.
And what sort of some of the biggest learnings, I guess, that you've taken from so much experience in like so many different areas of, I guess, mining, and then brought it to Foraco to make it the success that it is? Because, it is a success. So,
well, number one, don't carry too much debt. if it does turn, it doesn't matter how smart you are. Timing's everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, you want to make sure that you're not carrying too much debt. The other key one is you need good people around you.
Yeah.
It's a team, and people look at drilling and all they see is the drill rigs and the big trucks and everything, and think it's all equipment orientated, but that couldn't be further from the truth. It's about people. It's about people that can relate to other people, and really resilience, being able to get the job done, and keep on fronting up, no matter how bad and how rough it's been.
I did notice that a lot on sort of the Foraco page, even your page on LinkedIn, like the amount of shout outs, I guess, to people winning, like you had someone winning like the Drilling Association Woman of the Year award. You've had, these, I think you more recently, someone I think had left the company after 12 years and you guys celebrated that. Like, you see a bit of it, but you don't see it as frequent as I see Foraco post about their people as much as that. Is that something that you pride yourself in, is in ensuring that your staff feel, loved and warranted within their roles as well, and celebrating those wins?
Well, I think the whole team do. We went through a pretty rough trot there, and the ones that survived and came out the other end, they sort of valued the people that were around them and supported them through that.
Yeah.
And we were just so lucky to have young guys that had joined us, early 20s, and they'd taken long service before I'd left. So they're operations managers now. So
yeah,
it's just really rewarding to see the development of those people through the years, and you've got to keep your eye open for that sort of talent, and when you see it, look after it.
Hold on.
Yeah.
And I guess for yourself, within the role, like, what are you wanting to implement moving forward, I guess, at Foraco, and what sort of the future, I guess, hold?
Well, I've been retired for 2 years.
Yeah, well,
so
where
it's
do
not
you
my
want to
problem
see?
anymore.
Where do you see the company moving and pushing it from there?
There's not been a lot of change there, and that's a
Yeah.
good thing. And we look back now, and I was only talking to Nathan Elford, who took over from myself the other day.
Yeah.
And we said we really, through those lean years of 2013 to 2017, we sort of set out a strategy. We wanted to diversify the business. We wanted to get into water well drilling. We wanted to bring innovation, remote control, drill rigs to the fore. And we look back and, consciously, we didn't have a written plan, but we did have a plan, and we followed through on that. So I think that plan's still in place. And it's obviously, getting expanded. So there's some really great things they're doing with getting women into the business now.
I love that, yeah.
There's a job in South Australia where I think they're up over 20% females on site now.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned Paddy, who's our female driller of the year, or woman driller of the year. Just a great lady, and a real success story. Yeah.
No, I love that. I just love the, putting your people on blast per se, just saying that, look, we celebrate these guys and we love the fact that this is it. some companies will do it internally, but like vocalizing it out to the marketplace, it builds their brand as well, you know, and showing that you can do that. So for yourself, what's your goals over the next few years? Is it just
Live as long as I can.
yeah, it's good. Play golf.
Yeah, no, I like travelling. Yeah, so
That was good.
see more of this beautiful country, and when I can afford it, get overseas and
Just enjoy
fill
it.
in some gaps that I haven't been to yet.
No. Where is that one place, before we take a break, where is that one place that you want to visit the most? Whether it be yourself, with the wife, with the kids, like what's the one area of the world that you haven't ventured to that you'd want to see?
I think I'd like to get back to South Africa. And I've been to Cape Town a few times and done the wineries down there, but really spend some good quality wine drinking time in Cape Town, and then get up to some good game reserves too.
Yeah.
So
Head up to Joburg. It's the real Africa. Oh, that's great.
yeah, a bit more time back down there.
Yeah.
And look, again, I'll come back to Australia. You know, the Kimberley, some of the country up there is just magnificent.
It's insane. I've done a lot of, I guess, Victorian, like traveling around Vic and sort of a lot of the natural forests and stuff up there. Queensland's where I want to go, and then up north, I want to swim with whale sharks. That's my number one goal this upcoming season. So it's an absolutely gorgeous country. Australia is like it's really, really nice. A lot of it untouched, which is the beautiful part about it as well.
And again, not we just don't have the crowds that you
Yeah.
have elsewhere. And I'd sort of, whether I was more tolerant when I was younger or there was less people on the planet, but now when I head overseas, I think, man, there's too many people here.
Well, I mean, I guess you also tend to look at, like when you do go to somewhere, like you go to somewhere like the Pinnacles or, you know, up further, and they're, you know, when the crowds aren't really there, and you can just really enjoy the sound of nature and the sound of what it is, and you get to appreciate it a little bit more because you have seen so much hustle and bustle that.
And at night time, getting out and seeing the stars, you know, getting away, and there's probably billions of people on the planet that have never seen stars because of pollution and just where they live.
Just straight up in the inner
light
city.
pollution.
So like even nighttime now, I take the bins out and I look up and I see more stars than I would if I was just back home in Victoria. So anytime I get to go down south or whatever, I look on map and look for the darkest spot in that particular location. I'm just like, I'm going to be there. I'm going to look at it. So it's incredible. We're going to take a break for a minute, and then we're going to come back and talk about sort of some of the biggest challenges and stuff that you've sort of worked on, and dive a little bit deeper in, I guess, to the industry. But yeah, we'll take a break and come back.
Cool.
Albert, thank you so much for coming back. Welcome back. Say that. Now let's sort of, I guess, dive a little bit deeper into, I guess, the industry as a whole. Obviously, it's quite challenging. There are a lot of challenges that come up. Do you have a story or something that you felt that, or a challenge that you've overcome, like how you guys have overcome that as well?
Funny you should ask that.
Excellent, good. I'm glad we're on the same page.
I'm going to talk a little bit about a big project we did in Canada, and just for the reason that it's different to Australia. There were some pretty significant climatic challenges there that we had to overcome, and hopefully that gives your viewers a bit of a different perspective on what drillers have to get up to around the world. But there was a property in Canada called Voisey's Bay that was discovered. It's up in northern Labrador.
Okay.
So it's
Sounds
only
cold.
accessible by sea or air. There's no roads in there. So it's a remote community.
Yeah.
There's just below the Arctic Circle, so there's sea ice.
Okay.
The ocean's only accessible between July and November each year, so you've got 5 months ocean access.
Because it just freezes over?
Otherwise, the ice freezes up, and for salt water to freeze, it's got to be
it's got to be pretty cold.
freaking cold. Up to minus 50, high winds, so with the wind chill and everything, you can get to a minus 100 degrees up there Celsius. So pretty rough place to work. But there was a junior that found the initial discovery up there. They were called Diamond Fields.
Okay.
It was actually a company run by Robert Friedland.
Okay.
And folklore goes that he had a couple of geologists out there doing ground reconnaissance with helicopters. And he had to go and pick one up, or the chopper had to go and pick one up in the afternoon, and he had to go and pick one up in a different area. So he said to the first one, I'll just put you down here on this hill, some interesting looking rocks there, I'll go and get the other one. And a geo being a geo, picked up a bunch of samples, took them off and had a massade, and some, quite interesting nickel results came back. So they decided to drill that.
Yeah.
On the second hole, I think they hit 40 odd metres at 2 or 3% nickel,
Jeez.
which was a pretty good hit.
Yep.
But it was really I think it was the 7th hole here that they hit 104 metres at 4% nickel and 3% copper. So that was world-class intersection.
Yeah.
And it took off from there. So I think they had up to 15 drills on the property by 1996. So Diamond Fields as a junior were getting stuck into this big time, but I think they knew damn well that they just didn't have the resources or the capital or the technical expertise to take it where it needed to go. But Robert Friedland, being who he is, he was pretty canny, and he got tech interested. They bought 10% of the company.
Oh, okay, interesting.
For $100 million, so
Jeez.
That sort of valued the company at $1 billion.
Yep.
And then he got Falconbridge in. They bought 25% for $500 million, so that upped it to $2 billion.
Yeah.
And then
what a good negotiator.
Falconbridge, they later offered $3.5 billion for the company.
Wow. Okay.
And Falconbridge, they later became Xstrata and now Glencore.
Mm-hmm.
But Friedland was canny enough to know that if he got some other egos in the room, he could extract more value. So he got Inco involved, and they got into a bidding war and finally pushed it up to $4.3 billion back in the late 90s. And he sort of cashed out then. But if you know the story of Robert Friedland, he found the Oyu Tolgoi mine in Mongolia in the early 2000s, and more recently he's had the Kamoa-Kakula deposit in the DRC, which is one of the top 4 copper deposits in the world. So
just a copper magnet.
People say, he gets lucky. I think, he makes his own luck.
Of course.
But anyway, as the project got bigger, they were using a collection of smaller local contractors to do the drilling, and they realised that it was going to go to another level of magnitude. So they put out a large tender, and it was for 100,000 metres of drilling over 3 years. They wanted 7 fly drills, so helicopter transportable drills.
Wow.
2 had to have 2,000 metre capacity, 5 with 1,200 metre capacity, 5 smaller drills. Yeah. And all the equipment had to be mobilised before the end of November by sea because of the sea ice.
Does that all, when they talk helicopter, does everything go off at the same time? Because I've just got this picture of just waiting on the ground, people scanning them in, and there's just giant drill rigs being hammered down with helicopters. Do you see this?
Yeah, it really depends on the size of the chopper and the size of the rig. So the chopper has a maximum lifting weight component, so you have to break the rig down into those component sizes. The bigger the chopper, the bigger pieces you can lift.
Okay.
But we ended up going out there for a site visit on September the 11th, so we're getting pretty close to that November cut-off line anyway. And the only way in was on a float plane, so you fly in, land on a lake, pull up at a little dock and did a site visit. And we sort of had our bid where we thought we needed to be. Pretty complex logistics to get in there. Yeah. So we actually went back out to Newfoundland, St John's in Newfoundland, and presented the bid to the client personally. So they did get the right message, that we sort of understood what they were asking for, and they could ask us questions. So that was late September. They were meant to let us know in 2 days whether we were successful or not, but that took another week.
Okay.
So it was really the end of September when we were awarded the contract. So we had 6 weeks to get everything ready. That was build 7 fly drills. We needed 7,000 pieces of drill rod, casing, and drill pipe. We needed, I think we bought 20 skidoos in one hit, 2 bulldozers. We had to prefab a workshop to ship it up there in pieces.
Okay.
And there's no Bunnings, there's nothing up there. Yeah. So you had to take everything in that was needed. Yeah. And make sure that you're self-sufficient from the get-go. So, it was pretty exciting times. Telling your operations staff you had to get all that stuff done in 6 weeks and ready to mobilise. We had every fabrication shop within a 200-kilometre radius of where we were booked out building stuff for us.
And stuff like that, crazy.
And we started to push up against the hard dates. And Lloyd's of London, they wouldn't insure marine cargo after November 5th.
Okay.
And we were pushing up to that date. So actually Inco, the client, they took on the insurance for us. And we could have trucked the gear to Goose Bay, which is in Labrador, and then gone up by barge from there, but they didn't have the right size barges. So we trucked it to Montreal and we barged from there. So they're quite significant barges. We had 600 tonne of equipment to get up there.
Jeez.
We had to take 2 barges, 2 runs, and the barge is about 30 metres long, 20 metres wide. You get 16 20-foot containers on each one.
Yeah.
The first one, it was pretty uneventful. So they went down the St. Lawrence Seaway, then up the east coast of Canada, and they got there within 8 to 10 days, turned around, came back for the second barge. By then it was snowing in Montreal.
Yeah.
There were sheets of ice starting to appear on the St. Lawrence because that's fresh water. So
Yeah.
that was starting to get a little bit frozen. And then they hit rough weather on the way up, so they had to pull into a cove and sort of shelter there for a couple of days. Meanwhile, the sea ice was starting to form at Boise's Bay, so they had Zodiacs out in the bay with outboards overnight, just cutting the ice up, making sure the barge could get in. And yeah, we finally got there, dragged all the gear off. They were meant to load the incumbent contractor's gear back on to mobilise out of there at the beachhead, but they didn't want the barge to get frozen in, so they just took the barge out to deep water and they flew all of their equipment with the choppers back onto the barge to get them out. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, hugely logistically challenging with that climate there.
Yeah. Did you feel at any point that it wasn't going to happen? Like, were there moments where you just kind of stopped and was like, guys, we're not going to, like, if things are freezing over, you know, we've got people cutting ice, trying to make tracks for us to get in, you know, the helicopters aren't going to do it. Like, were there moments where you had doubt in it, or were you just like all like guns blazing?
No,
like,
there's no plan B.
No, okay, cool.
So yeah, we just worked non-stop to make it happen. I'd go to sleep with a notebook next to my bed. I'd wake up 2 or 3 times during the night and write stuff down, and then the next day you'd spend another 14, 15 hours ticking stuff off. We'd have 2 meetings each day to make, you know, what did we have to do, what did we get accomplished. There were no spreadsheets or anything. You just got in and did it.
Wow.
And yeah, it happened in the end. So, you know, some things we did forget. You get a lot of ice and that build up from water around, and how you get rid of that is with salt. We forgot to bring salt in. So the only way we could get that in was to fly it in.
Yeah.
And you know, each bag of salt that cost $5 is costing $25 to fly in, and you go through a shit ton of salt.
Yeah.
So yeah, just little things, but considering everything used to cost like $20 a kilo to bring in by plane, they became pretty expensive if they did miss the cut.
Yeah, it's all built up, yeah.
Everything was done on skidoos up there. Like I said, we had to buy 20 for the project. They miscalculated the fuel or whatever at one stage, the client. They had to skidoo 400,000 litres of fuel into the project. So even if you're bringing in like 400 litres, 2 drums with a skidoo on a sled, that's 1,000 skidoo trips.
Yeah,
so yeah, it was just mind-boggling.
To see people just running rampantly and just trying to get this. This is so cool.
So yeah, we got there. They built a mine, it's a world-class mine, and actually Foraco is back out there again.
Oh, fantastic.
They've sort of won the contract again in the last 4 or 5 years, and
Yep.
doing surface and underground drilling out there. So yeah,
It's all come full circle.
interesting insight into some of the challenges the Canadians have to deal with.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, the guys out here just straight out. It's hot weather, but wow, that is it's definitely I feel like if the communication wasn't there between you and your team, you know, at any point, you know, and having those meetings and being sort of on the same page and realizing there wasn't a plan B, it probably never would have happened. You know, you just needed one person to just kind of be like, a bit skeptical, but it seemed like everyone was sort of on the same page and going.
We were, we're all committed.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't too popular for a while, but it ebbed and flowed, and you had to get it done, so you did.
Yeah. Going back on that, if you could do it again, I'm not saying you would, but like if you could do it again, is there something that you would have changed on how you approached that particular challenge? Like the stuff knowing now, the technology that you know now, would there be other ways that you would manage that back then?
I don't think so. Like the time was the killer there.
Yeah.
That was the major hurdle, gateway to get through. So if you had more time, you'd probably do it differently. But with the time constraints we had, I think, you know, the team just did a fantastic job to really just break it down into smaller chunks and manageable chunks, and spread them out as far and wide as we could to make sure it happened within that time frame that we needed.
So to access that site, is it still the same logistical nightmare, or is it like, are there more inroads to it? Are there different ways to
I
get
had a
there?
quick Google today. Like the only planes that fly in there are twin otters, so they can hold about 14, 15 people.
Yeah, okay.
The concentrate comes out of the mine. The mine actually built their own icebreaker.
Oh, wow,
So
okay.
they could take concentrate out, I think, not for the whole year, but they'd extend that shipping season from 5 months to 8 months or something.
That's, yeah.
So I have seen some actual video of the icebreakers coming in. It's just amazing to see them, you know, more or less coming across this white field of snow, but it's sea ice and just the sea ice churning off the bow and that as they pull into port there. It's,
So cool.
yeah.
Definitely got it in there. Fantastic. For you, I mean, obviously, it's you've come from crayfishing to this incredible career of being able to do these sorts of things and have these sorts of challenges to be able to come across. What's some advice, I guess, you'd give to younger drillers in terms of they're just starting out their journeys and, you know, potentially seeing this as a career? Like, what's a piece of advice you'd give to them on their first or second day? What's that feeling?
Be curious.
Mm-hmm.
I think the world lacks curious people. Find out about what you're doing, why, what's it for, who uses it, how do they use it. Ask questions, be interested in your job. If you're not interested in your job, it's going to be a pretty long and painful career, really. So, be interested, be curious, and don't be afraid to give things a crack. You know, if somebody asked you, they obviously think that you're ready for it. You may not think that you're ready for it personally, but if somebody is asking you to do something, they probably think that you're ready and know that you can take the next step with the right sort of guidance.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, a question I always ask everybody that comes on the show, you've been in the industry for a long time. We've sort of noted that. You've sort of seen the evolution of drill rigs change. I mean, yourself being able to sort of fix ones. I still think you could fix one if I gave you the tools today. But where do you sort of see the industry going? Because there's a lot of talk, and we were just having a conversation just about AI and stuff like that, but there's a lot of talk about, automated this and, self-driving that. Like, where do you foresee the industry potentially moving forward as we go into this new phase?
I think it's an evolution, and you can't get from A in the alphabet to Z without going through B, C, D, and the rest of it. Mm-hmm. And you really have to start that journey of remote control, bringing technology into your business. You just can't go from the way we used to do it 10, 15 years ago and have an AI drill rig buying that off the shelf and think you're going to be successful. So you've got to put your toe in the water and start to understand that and build that knowledge and skill base as you go forward. And I think the way that's happening is, number one, remote control to make the jobs easier, more accessible to a broader spectrum of the population. Mm-hmm. That's happening now. Once you've got that, the automation isn't such a big step to bring on top of that. Yeah. And then you bring the machine learning, and you can layer that over the top. So you'll still have a driller, but he won't be tied to the drill rig all day. He'll be able to turn his back, go and do other tasks. The thing will drill productively and safely while he isn't there. But it'll free him up to do other productive work.
Perfect.
And
Him
or her.
Well, yeah, exactly. And then, so we've talked about, obviously, your advice to the drillers, and we've sort of looked at technology. What do you sort of say to drilling companies or exploration companies or people, I guess, within this space that are very much still set in terms of their old way of thinking of, manual is best for it? I know it's tough to change minds, and people have had, if it's not broke, don't fix it mentality, but what do you say to those guys when talking technology?
Well, the dinosaurs didn't change or adapt, and they're not here any longer, are they? Look, if we didn't change, we'd still be running around with bows and arrows, living in caves. So change is a given. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. I don't think you should just accept it blindly. You should question it. You should understand it, and see where it can benefit you as an individual and your company that you work for. Because a lot of change will be driven by, it's going to benefit the person driving the change, not necessarily you, that they've got a vested interest in it. Yeah. So be critical of it, have a good look at it. But really, somebody explain, change is like a train coming into a railway station. some people get on board early and get a good seat.
Yeah.
Others hang around the platform until the train's just about to leave. They still get on board, but
Yeah.
they don't have a very good seat. And there's others that stand on the track and think they're going to stop the train of change, and the train always wins.
I love that. That's fantastic. All right. Well, that's look, I've kept you a long time now. We've gone through quite a extensive history, and it's been fantastic. For yourself, I guess, you know, it's really just enjoying retirement now, right? Like that's your goal. Are you sort of advising to anyone? Are you doing any other extra work that you want to shout out?
I still do a little bit for Foraco, so
Perfect.
yeah, I get in there and annoy them sort of once a week. A few projects for the ADIA.
Yep.
So yeah,
Great
that sort of,
organisation.
you know, keeps a finger in the industry, and you know, you sort of keep tabs on what's going on. And
Fantastic.
other than that, no, just enjoy travel and
Perfect.
get out with the motorbikes and the caravan and
So good.
enjoy it.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much for stopping in. I actually genuinely appreciate the chat that we've had today. It's actually been really, really insightful and a lot to learn. And looking forward to catching up with you again shortly.
No worries.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you.